Hello class, we're about to start section 3.1 topic of interest. We're on page 205. The learning objectives is to define interest and understand related terminology, to develop simple interest formulas, and to use simple interest formulas to analyze financial issues. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, a quote by Benjamin Franklin. Now we move on to page 206. It says interest is a fee paid for the use of money. For example, if you borrow money from a bank to buy a car, you must not only pay back the amount of money that you borrowed, but also an additional amount called the interest for the use of the bank's money. On the other hand, if you deposit money in a savings account, the bank will pay you interest for saving money since it will be using your money to provide loans, mortgages, etc. to people who are borrowing money. The stated rate of interest is generally given as a yearly percentage of the amount borrowed or deposited. There are two kinds of interest. Simple interest is paid strictly as a percentage of the original amount of money. Compound interest is a percentage of an original amount as well as a percentage of the new amount, including previously calculated interest. We will study simple interest in this lesson and compound interest in the next. Number one, let's say that you get a $600 tax refund and you wisely decide to put it into a long-term investment that pays 5% in simple interest each year. How much money would that add to the account each year? Remember, with simple interest, a certain percentage of an original amount is added to the account. So basically it goes like this. You have $600 you're investing, and it gives you 5% interest. We'll change that 5% to 0.05, and 600 times 0.05 will give us $30 each year. Okay, number two. Write out the multiplication you did to get the answer to question 1. The next goal is to write a general formula for computing the amount of interest earned. Substitute the letter P for the original amount invested, $600, and the letter R for the percentage you multiply. You multiply by written in decimal form, of course. So we have the $600 times the 0.05, and we know that would equal to $30. So this 600 would be our P, or our principal. This 0.05 would be our rate, or our R. And is equal to, this will be the interest, or our I. Okay. Now, we move on to the next page. Now we look here at problem number 3. It says, fill in the following table, which shows the growth of the account over several years, as well as the total amount of interest earned. You'll need a correct answer to question 1. And remember that this is simple interest, so the interest earned each year is always calculated on the original value of the investment. So we know after year 1 it'll be $30 because it's still the $600 times the 5%. That will give us $30 in interest. So our new value will be $630. The second year we're going to add another $30 to it. So that means that you will earn a total of $60 in interest, which will make this $660. Then you're going to add on another $30, which would be $90, and this would be $690. Add on another $30, that'll be $120. This would be $720. Another $30, this would be $150. This will give us $750. And then we look here after 10 years. Remember, you're earning $30 every year. So that will give you $300 in interest. So it'll be a total of $900, which would be the value of the account. Now, it says, look carefully at the first and second columns of your table. What is the relationship between the number of years that have passed and the total interest earned? Describe it verbally. The total interest is the interest from the first year multiplied by the number of years. All right. Now again, the total interest is the interest from the first year, which up here is 30, multiplied by the number of years. Remember we did the 10 years, 30 times 10 gave us 300 for the total amount of interest. And then we did 30 times 2, that's 60, 30 times 3 is 90, 30 times 4 is 120, and so on. Now, down here in this brown box, we have a few key terms here. We have interest, principal, rate, time, and future value. Now, we saw interest, we saw principal, and we saw rate on the previous page when we classified these values. We got interest, we got rate, and we have principal. So we already are familiar with those. Now, time. Time T, or term, is the length of time that the money is being borrowed or invested. When the rate is given as a percent per year, time has to be written in years. Now, future value is the amount of the loan or investment plus the interest paid or earned. So we are going to deal with these two type of problems on the next page. All right. So now, on page 208, it says, in the work we did in the group portion, the principal was P equals $600. The rate was 5% written as a decimal, which is R equals 0.05. The amount of time varied when filling out the table of interest and future value. In question 2, you should have discovered that the formula for computing the interest in 1 year is P times R. Use this and your answer to question 4 to write a formula for finding the amount of interest I that accumulates in T years. So I is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. So I is equal to P times R times T. Now, remember we had the interest for the first year. I equals P times R is the interest for the first year. Total interest is the first year interest multiplied by the number of years. So that is how we get the I equals PRT. Now for number 2, it says the total value of the account after T years, which we're calling future value and representing with the letter A, is calculated by adding the total amount of interest to the principal amount. Use your answer to question 1 above to write a formula for future value in terms of P, R, and T. So you add a principal plus the interest. That's what the future value is. But they want us to rewrite this. Now we know principal plus interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So we're going to change this interest to principal times rate times time. So far the problem is the same. Now, they want us to write our final answer in terms of PRT. Technically, we are there. But there's another way of writing this. We could factor out a p, and that would leave us 1 plus r times t. So it'd be p times the parenthesis 1 plus rt. And that is the final form that we typically would do future value in. Okay, number 3. It says use your formula from question 2 to find the future value of your original $600 investment at 5% interest in 30 years. So we have A is equal to the principal times 1 plus RT. Then we substitute. So the principal is 600. We don't have to write the dollar sign until the end of the problem. So we have 600 times 1 plus, the rate is 0.05, and the time is 30 years, because they said 5% in 30 years. Okay, so now we have 600 times 1 plus 0.05 times 30 is actually 1.5. So we will have A is equal to 600 times 2.5. And when we put that in a calculator, it will give us $1,500. So the future value would be $1,500 for 30 years. All right, now, number 4. The right side of your answer to question 2 should be a sum, meaning that it has 2 terms. Use some algebra to rewrite the formula so that it has just 1 term. The result should look like the principal amount times some quantity. Okay, listen, we already did that. But what they're saying is if you kept this value here, you kept this version of the formula, they will want you to rewrite it in the version that we ended up with. So that's basically what they were asking for number 4. So I guess we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but still no harm, no foul. All right. Now we move on to page 209. Now on page 209, you notice it has the formulas listed here. It says interest is equal to principal times rate times time, I equals PRT. Future value is equal to principal plus interest, A equals P plus I, or A is equal to P times the parenthesis 1 plus RT. Now, it says here for number 5, to meet payroll during a down period, United Ceramics Incorporated needed to borrow $2,000 at 4% simple interest for 3 months. Without doing any calculations, make an educated guess as to how much interest you think would be due. So if you look here, they did 4% and the interest for 3 months. Now, if we look at this, first of all, we know 4%, we know 3 months is 1/4 of a year. We know that. So if you're doing 4% for 1/4 of a year, so that'll be 4% divided by 4, which will leave you 1%. Okay? So we know that will leave us 1%. So for 3 months, we would look to pay about 1%. Now, we had $2,000 here. Now, they told us without doing any calculations, but we're doing this in our head. We know 10% of 2,000 is 200. So 1% of 2,000 would be $20. So we'll say approximately $20. That's how much interest will be paid for that 3-month time period. Now, it says now use formulas to find the interest they paid and the future value at the end of 3 months. Okay, so we're going to do interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So interest is equal to the principal, which would be 2,000. The rate is 0.04. And the time, remember time is done in years, so it'll be 1/4 of a year. Or you could do 0.25. Now, when we put this in our calculator, so we could do parenthesis 2000, parenthesis 0.04, then parenthesis 1/4. And that gave us $20. Now they ask us to do the future value, which is A is equal to the principal times 1 plus RT. A is equal to the principal is 2000 times 1 plus the rate is 0.04. And the time will be 1/4 of a year. So we'll put this in our calculator. You add 2000, parenthesis, 1 plus, an open parenthesis, 0.04. And then we would double close that parenthesis. And then we would do another open parenthesis of 1 divided by 4. Oh. Okay, I made a little error here. And move this parenthesis over. All right, I must have made a slight error here. Let me move this. Oh, okay. I see what I did. All right, I made a mistake and put in 1 extra parenthesis. All right, so let me retype that. Okay, so we had 2000, open parenthesis, 1 plus, then we have parenthesis, 0.04. Close that parenthesis, open that parenthesis, 1 divided by 4. The right arrow and close it. So your answer here would be $2,020. And that is the future value. Now, we go down here to the bottom. It says it's very common for simple interest loans to be paid off in monthly installments. This is how many loans for things like furniture and electronics work. Let's look at finding the monthly payment for a simple interest loan. A biotech startup borrowed $68,000 to buy lab equipment at 9% simple interest for 1.5 years. Find the future value of the loan. So we know future value is A equals P times 1 plus RT. Now we could go off to the side and list a few things. First of all, the principal here is $68,000. The rate here is 9%, which is 0.09. And then the time is 1.5 years or 1.5 years. So now we would substitute. Principal is 68,000. The rate is 0.09 and the time is 1.5. Now, we can actually substitute this in real quick. Yeah, 68,000. The interest is 9%. And the time is 1.5. We would have $77,180. All right. Now we move on to page 210. It says here, divide the future value by the number of months to find the monthly payment. Okay, so the future value was $77,180. And we know a year and a half is 18 months. So now we would take the 77,180 and divide that by 18 months. So that would give us $4,287.78 per month. And this would be approximate because we had to round. So that will be your monthly payment. Okay, now it says, notice that the simple interest formula contains 4 variable quantities: interest, principal, rate, and time. Because we know how to solve equations from algebra, if we know 3 of those 4 quantities for a given account, we can solve to find the one we don't know. The problem: Philip's Health and Beauty Spa is replacing one of its workstations. The interest on a loan secured by the spa was $93.50. The money was borrowed at 5.5% simple interest for 2 years. What was the amount that they borrowed? Number 1, what information is provided in this problem? Write out each piece of information as an equation. For example, if the loan had been taken out for 8 years, you would write T equals 8. So you have I is equal to $93.50. The rate, because it told you the interest was $93.50, the rate is the 5.5% written as a decimal. And then the time, we have 2 years. Now what we don't know here is the principal. That's the only thing we're basically missing from this. It says, what is it you're being asked to find? Principal is what we are being asked to find. Okay, so that took care of page 210. Now we move on to page 211. For number 3, it says use the simple interest formula to set up and solve an equation to solve the problem. Show all work. So we had interest is equal to principal times rate times time. Our interest was $93.50. Our principal we didn't know. Our rate was 0.055 and our time was 2 years. Now if we put this in a calculator, as far as the 0.055 times 2, that gives us 0.11. So it'd be $93.50 is equal to P times 0.11. Now we want to get P by itself. So let me write this here. We could change this as 0.11 times P. Divide each side by 0.11. And we could put this in our calculator. So it'd be 93.50 divided by 0.11. So that would give us $850 is equal to P. So our principal is $850. Now, it says questions 1 through 3 illustrate a really useful framework for solving this type of problem. When you're using an algebraic formula, it's always a good idea to clearly identify the information that you're given, as well as what it is you're being asked to find. Then you could plug that information into the known formula and solve the resulting equation. Number 4, after receiving an inheritance, a newly married couple invested $15,250 for 10 years and received $9,150 in simple interest. What was the rate that the investment paid? Use the framework from questions 1 through 3 and solve all of your work. Write your answer in the form of a sentence. So, first thing, our principal is the $15,250. Our rate is not listed. Our time is 10 years. And our interest is $9,150. So what we're missing here is the rate. So we add interest is equal to principal times rate times time. The interest is $9,150. The principal is $15,250. The rate we don't know, and the time is 10 years. So if we multiply this here, this will give us 152,500 times the rate. Now, we divide each side by 152,500. So we'll put that in our calculator. We have 9,150 divided by 152,500. So this would give us 0.06 is equal to R. So we could write this. It says write your answer in the form of a sentence. The investment pays 6% interest. Okay, now we go here to number 5. If that couple had been able to find an investment that paid 9% interest, how much more quickly would they have made that $9,150 in simple interest? Use the framework from questions 1 through 3 and show all of your work. Write your answer in the form of a sentence. Okay, so remember our interest will still be $9,150. Our principal would still be the $15,250. Our rate is given to us at 9%, but our time we don't know because we want to figure out how much faster that we would get this $9,150. So interest is equal to principal times rate times time. The interest is $9,150. The principal is $15,250. The rate is 0.09 and then times T. So it'd be $9,150 is equal to, now if we take our 15,250 and multiply it by 0.09, we would get $1,372.50 times T. We divide each side by $1,372.50. So now we'll put this in our calculator. $9,150 divided by $1,372.50. So this would give us approximately 6.67 years. That would be the approximate value of T. Now it says, let me see, write your answer in the form of a sentence. It says how much more quickly would they have made that $9,150. So this is how long it says that it would take. To find out how much more quickly, we would have to take the time from the previous problem, which is 10 years, minus the 6.67, and that would give us 3.33 years. That's how much more quickly we would make that money. So now, or that interest. So now we would need to write this as a sentence. They would earn this amount, which is the $9,150 in 6.67 years instead of 10 years, which is 3.33 years faster. Okay, now we go to the next page, which happens to be our last page for this lesson. It says, if you look at it a certain way, simple interest in a saving account doesn't seem terribly fair. Remember, interest is a fee charged for using someone's money. So when you put money into a bank account, the bank is essentially paying you to borrow your money because they could use it to increase their business in other areas. So far, so good. But when you keep that money in the account for a long time, things start to go bad. Let's say that you invest $1,000 into a simple interest account at 3% interest per year. Then, according to the simple interest formula, after 1 year, you will have earned interest is equal to 1,000 times 0.03 times 1, or $30. Don't spend it all in one place. In any case, at the end of the first year, you now have $1,030 in your account, not $1,000. Yet, when interest is simple, the amount of interest paid per year remains constant over the life of the investment. Why is this bad for you? Let's see. Forget about the original amount and just think of the $1,030 in your account at the end of year one as a new investment. If you get $30 in interest over the next year, what percentage did you actually get? Okay, so if we're going to look at this, they said if we got another $30. Okay, so let's start off with the 1,000. Remember the $1,000, it was at 3%. So now we're going to do the 1,030. So our principal will be 1,030. Our rate, we don't know. Our time would be 1 year, and our interest would be $30. Okay, so now we will put this in a formula. I equals PRT. The interest is 30. The principal is 1,030. We don't know what the rate is, and the time is 1. So now we have 30 is equal to 1,030 times R. Now we know 1,030 times 1 is just 1,030. Okay, so now we'll divide each side by 1,030. And we'll put this in our calculator. We'll put 30 divided by 1,030. And if we round this to 3 decimal places, it'd be 0.029. So our percent is 2.9%. It was approximately 2.9% is our R. Okay, so now with number 7, if you'd actually been paid the full 3% on your $1,030 in the second year, how much more interest would you have earned? Again, show your work. So again, we will go down a list. The principal is 1,030. The rate here we would say is 3%. The time is 1 year, and the interest we don't know. So as I equals PRT, I is equal to 1,030 times 0.03 times 1. I should have put this as 0.03 for the 3%. Okay, so now when we put this in our calculator, we have 1,030 times 0.03. So that'll be $30.90. Okay, so now they ask us how much more interest will we have earned. So we would take the $30.90 minus the original $30. And so we would get 90 cents. 90 cents more. Now we'll take up this discussion in the next lesson. For now, refer back to these questions when answering the first question in the looking ahead section of the portfolio. Okay, we are done with section 3.1. Now, remember, you have to do your check assignment for 3.1. Also, your project 2 is going to be due this Friday by 11:59 p.m. And that will be Friday, November 20th by 11:59 p.m. Project 2 will be due. And make sure that Section 3.2 check assignment will be due tomorrow. And then also the worksheets for Section 3.1 and 3.2 will be due by Friday. Okay, have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will talk to you later.